The next team will be here about Penha history program and future directions.
Thank you all very much, and it's great to see such a turnout here to celebrate Penha's 35th anniversary. I'm John Morton. I'm Professor of Anthropology at the Natural Resources Institute at the University of Greenwich, and pastoralism has been a dominant theme in my research and consultancy career over several decades. I go back a long way with Penha. I was present at the first meeting in the old ODI offices in Regent's Park, in fact, and have a special connection with that meeting because I was the only person at that stage who owned what we then referred to as a word processor that Zare knew. So I got the task of writing up the minutes of that meeting. But my involvement with Penha was much more varied than that. I was for several years a trustee, and for some years also chair of trustees, and I've worked on at least one joint research project with John Livingston, who's one of the authors of the presentation we're about to see. We're about to see a pre-recorded presentation where I think Amsale Shibeshi will take us through some slides that she has prepared with John Livingston and with Sadia, all from the Hargeisa office. That will last about 20 minutes, and after that, Dr. Rita Lambert here will act as a discussant to that presentation. Rita is Associate Professor at the Development Planning Unit of University College London. After that, I very much welcome questions and comments from the floor. In terms of questions, it's not necessarily clear who's going to answer your questions, as John and Amsale, I don't think, can be online to answer them, but we hope the current Penha crew and each of you can answer the questions put and also contribute your own viewpoints on some of the issues facing Penha. So with that, I would like to hand over, systems permitting, to the presentation that's been prepared by the team in Hargeisa. Thank you very much.
I'm Amsale Shibeshi. I'm Penha Regional Programs Coordinator. Today I will be presenting the region's history up to 2024. So today we'll give an overview of Penha's work in the region. We cannot cover everything, so much has been done over the years. But we want to give a sense of our track record and the great potential that exists to do more with new priorities. So much has changed over the years. This is a young region in terms of demographic. Pastoralism has shown that it can be dynamic, both modern and mobile. Women and youth are playing much greater roles with both challenges and opportunities. What we will cover today we'll describe Penha's approach, aims, and core principles. We'll also describe Penha's history over the past 35 years in the region. We'll briefly look at Penha's international partners and sources of funding with a view to the future. Then we'll look at research and project implementation before finishing with an outline of future directions. Penha's aims and objectives and approaches. We aim to link up the grassroots and the policy levels. We have a set of core principles, including gender equality. We combine research and project implementation so that each informs the other. Research strengthens the work on the ground, and insights from project experience, which feeds into research and policy work. Beginnings in London, Penha's history. Penha began as a network of British and Horn of Africa academics and practitioners established in 1989, working closely with the UK's ODI and IIED. In 2015, we held a 25th anniversary conference at ODI that brought together many of our colleagues and partners from different NGOs, universities, and research institutions, including IIED, IDS, and others. Penha began as a network and established a regional office at Addis Ababa University in 1992, staffed by experts from all the Horn countries, with a sub-office in Asmara, Eritrea. Penha also collaborated closely with Mekelle University from its inception. After the Ethio-Eritrean War in 1998, Penha was forced out of Ethiopia. Penha subsequently worked through regional offices in Hargeisa, Somaliland, Khartoum, Sudan, and Kampala in Uganda. Penha established different country offices over the years. In each country, Penha has a small core staff supplemented by a network of specialists who come in as needed. This enables Penha to expand and contract in line with the available funding. It also makes for a very collaborative way of working. Penha is a network of people who are committed to development. Penha International Partners. Penha has a number of international partners. We work with British universities, mainly UCL, and universities across the region. Over the past 10 years or so, we have had close relationships with FAO and GIZ as implementing partners. We have done baseline studies and analysis for them and organize workshops and training events. We are also a member of FAO's Pastoralist Knowledge Hub and CELEP. Penha's collaboration with Trepenbos International, TBI, of the Netherlands over recent years has been very fruitful. While Penha is locally rooted, these international partnerships are vital. They enable Penha to draw on and contribute to the latest research and analysis, and they help Penha to have a stronger voice in policy debates. Penha's London office has played a central role in developing these international collaborations, and the London base remains vital. The London office provides a link to European development debates and to the growing diaspora. It also helps to ensure that Penha maintains a regional identity. Penha is not a Somali or an Ethiopian or a Sudanese organization. Penha country chapters have no clan or ethnic bias. Penha's sources of funding. FAO and GIZ have been important sources of funding for us, as well as the Somali Development Fund. We have had a very diverse set of donors over the years. DFID, FCDO, was the main source of funding for our seawater greenhouse project in Berbera. In Ethiopia, the current program is largely Dutch funded, with a new funding linked to UN climate change programs. We need to diversify our funding base and tap into new sources of funding for new priorities: climate change, gender, use, and value chains. Ongoing work with ZINEP and UNIDO should lead to a substantial new programs in Ethiopia in 2026, covering Afar, Amhara, Somali, and Tigray regions. Penha research capabilities. We have carried out a wide range of research over the years, and Penha Associates contributed 5 chapters to IDS 2013 book on pastoral development, including a chapter based on our Danida-funded Women's Economic Empowerment Program. Research has always been oriented towards addressing key development issues. The PSNP and Penha's recent publication. Penha's book on Ethiopia's safety net program in Ethiopia addressed a number of important issues. It highlighted the need to integrate existing social capital into safety net programs and to adopt a much more participatory approach. Ethiopian associates have been involved in efforts to enhance the implementation on the ground. The PSNP involves an approach similar to what we have tried to do with an FAO in Somaliland, putting money in people's pockets and building environmental infrastructure for the long term with cash for work. But in Somaliland, the strength of traditional institutions and the use of digital technology with biometrics and digital cash transfers made implementation much more effective. Penha has produced a number of studies and publications over the couple of years, as you can see in the slides. The ones we have just seen are some of the recent publications which have informed policy and practice. Combining research and project implementation. Research feeds into and draws on our work on the ground. Core areas are livelihoods, environmental management, water supply, gender equality, and women's empowerment. Penha Somaliland project implementation from 2021. Since 2001, we have implemented a number of projects across the country. The focus has been on livelihoods and environmental management, working closely with local institutions and community groups. Over recent years, Penha has carried out a number of GESI, gender equality and social inclusion studies for the Somaliland Development Fund, supporting the design of government programs in agriculture, livestock, transport, fisheries, and water sectors. Currently, Penha Somaliland is also working with the government of Djibouti to develop a prosopis control and use program in collaboration also with FAO Djibouti. Our seawater greenhouse project in Berbera is the first of its kind in the region. Penha Seawater Greenhouse Project was designed by Charlie Payton of Seawater Greenhouse Limited, UK. It uses solar power desalination for horticulture and salt production. It has been successfully introduced in the Gulf and in Australia. But this is a slightly different scaled-down design. With NIVA of Norway, we are trying to adapt it to extract minerals such as lithium from the seawater. Penha's TBI program in Ethiopia. Penha has worked with TBI and C4 ICRAF to develop a national drylands restoration strategy, integrating trees, crops, and livestock with livelihoods and inclusive value chain development at the center. This has been officially endorsed by the government. Contextualized regional strategies have also been developed. Penha and partners are now implementing the strategy on the ground in Tigray and Afar regions. The national strategy developed and then it was cascaded to the regions. These photos show the published strategy and some of the validation workshops in the regions. Activities in the Tigray-Afar border landscape. The landscape restoration work involves FMNR, farmer-managed natural resources, closing off areas to allow natural regeneration, contour terraces and bands, etc., as well as a livelihood component with women and youth. The work is implemented by a Penha-led consortium involving C4 ICRAF, Mekelle University, Samara University, and local and regional government institutions. It adapts to and mitigates climate change, enhances the ecosystem services that underpin the livelihoods of farmers, agro-pastoralists and pastoralists, while increasing local incomes through value chain development and private sector engagement. C4 and ICRAF's RRC, Rural Resource Center model, it involves establishing 3 nurseries as commercially self-sustaining centers for the production and sale of quality planting materials. Our center at the Arato site is managed by the Tsegereda Women's Association, which collaborates with local youth groups. The Abogerebs, Fathers of the Trees, Association of Elders from Tigray and Afar are important partners overseeing natural resource management and conflict resolution. So this is the tree nursery rehabilitation and quality seedling production of our site. The nursery in Tigray, which is managed by women, supplies planting materials on a commercial basis and is building the capacity to be a supplier to the large-scale tree planting Green Legacy initiative. In the dryland, selected commercial trees will complement natural regeneration of acacia woodlands and emphasize fodder for livestock, combining trees, crops, and livestock with value chain development and policy influence. The work on the Tigray-Afar landscape involves an integrated landscape management approach that aims to meet environment and climate goals, at the same time as strengthening local livelihoods, building local capacity, and delivering tangible benefits to local people. Men, women, youth, farmers, agro-pastoralists, and pastoralists. By working with others and with local institutions and government, we hope to achieve impact at scale. Penha has helped to develop a national strategy that is backed by a significant allocation of government funding. Collaboration across borders. In 2024, Penha collaborated with Hello Trust to implement a project that brought demined land back into productive use. We are exploring the possibility to implement a similar project in war-affected Tigray and Afar. Over recent years, Penha has supported lessons learning and capacity building across Tigray and Somaliland. There is a great scope to develop collaboration across the region and in impactful ways. Penha is well placed to play a positive role in the changes that are underway in the region and internationally, linking up the grassroots and policy levels. Future directions. The region has seen tremendous changes over the years, with economic growth and social change, with increasing urbanization and migration and the digital revolution. Penha's work has evolved over the years to address new opportunities and challenges. Climate change dominates development discourse, and the drylands of the Horn account for a large share of its carbon sequestration potential. Women and young girls play much greater roles in the economy and in society, and more inclusive and participatory approach to development must engage with all social groups, particularly the youth. Young men are sadly the main participants in the region's conflicts. Our work on the ground has an important peace-building element, and we work with traditional institutions and community groups that can play important roles in conflict resolution. Penha's participation in national and regional forums can also help to build peace. Peace, inclusion, and economic development go together. Penha is working to strengthen local livelihoods and develop key dryland value chains, including those for milk, fodder, frankincense, gums and raisins, and honey. In our policy work, we promote inclusive business models and private sector engagement that involves outgrower relationships between producer associations and firms. This is a major focus of recent work with GEF, with UNEP and UNIDO, and the government of Ethiopia, as well as UNDP in Somaliland. In all our work, we must remember that some 70% of the Horn's population is made up of young people. We need to involve and inspire the next generation in education, awareness, enterprise, with positive vision of diversification and social development that includes pastoralism. And I wish you fruitful deliberations. And thank you to Penha and to all my colleagues.
I'm sure everyone enjoyed that. I don't think the Hargeisa team have been able to be online with us, but I'm sure that the London office can relay our thanks for really interesting presentation. I mean, someone who has had maybe a bit less contact with Penha over the last few years, the lockdown and other reasons, I've been very struck how great the progress has been, and this record of new projects, new funders, new publications, etc. I'd like to hand over to Rita to get some of her take on the presentation and the bigger questions behind it about what Penha is doing and how Penha can go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And I would like to thank Amsale. I don't know if she's hearing us right now because we are online, and I just want to thank her a lot for the presentation, because it really is a testament of the remarkable. Okay, better? Yeah, thank you. No, I just was saying a big thanks to summarizing the work, which is really probably very difficult to summarize 35 years worth in 20 minutes, but this is a great testament of the fantastic achievements, the commitment to the region, and the ability to survive 35 years in a context in constant flux. I mean, that in itself is a great feat. And I guess my provocation, let's say, and maybe with the questions that come from the floor, will be how to survive the next 35 years, particularly now that we have an intensified context with conflict, climate change altogether. So, but to go back first to the kind of thematic areas, I'm really impressed by the, the kind of implementation and ability to publish and really share this knowledge throughout, which is really important. I mean, a lot of it is oral history that's kept, and to be able to really put a lot of thought and time to make this knowledge, the pastoral knowledge systems, more widely understood, and how it can then be taken into consideration policy is, a really important advocacy work there. And with regards to the actual thematic areas, livelihood. Sorry. Okay, now? Okay, I'm going to try and speak up. Okay, so I was saying that the actual thematic entry points that Penha has been working on, this livelihoods, environmental management, water supply and sanitation, gender equality, and women's economic empowerment, really embody this very holistic approach. And these themes are not only important or only crucial in their own right, but it's precisely when we look at how deeply interconnected they are that it really shows the recognition of these multifaceted challenges of the region and what it faces. So really, particularly in the context of climate change and ongoing conflict, I would like to highlight that these are the areas, the thematic areas that in themselves are weaponized. Yeah, are weaponized to dominate, to control, to exploit. So in this sense, working through these very themes is an act of resistance and an important entry point for restorative justice when we're talking now about the conflicts. So I would say, rather than looking at peace building as yet another thematic entry point, it needs to be really transversal through these themes. Okay, so here we are having the possibility of really approaching each of these thematic areas, the implementation and the actual research on them as forms of bringing peace and restorative justice, not just as an extra theme. And so I would like to ask, so how can we approach this really? I mean, we really need to put our heads together and think, if this next year's and currently the conflict does not allow us to work in the way we want to, what are the approaches that we can take for action and research on the ground with this in mind? What methodologies, what strategies can we envisage? Yeah. And there is, of course, a lot to learn from other countries that have done this, other regions where conflict resolution has been done in very different ways. For example, in the case of Rwanda, they couldn't rely on the criminal justice system and that relies on punitive measures, but really had to go back to traditional forms of conflict management. So really, this idea here is really quite interesting, how Penha could be very well placed precisely for this, because in a sense we're saying that, to be able to acknowledge the traditional ways of peacemaking and of knowledge system is what we need. So this really mirrors the pastoral way of life, which Penha has reframed as a form of environmental stewardship. So by valuing these traditional ecological knowledge and empowering communities to manage their resources sustainably while maintaining the cultural identities, can really carve a way to this reconciliation, renovation, and conflict management. And I think really looking at the work of Penha and having known Zerem now for many years and so on, I think really it's really positioned in this unique position because of the role of facilitation and mediation in peace building efforts in the Horn of Africa. And the reason I say it's very well placed is because of that deep local knowledge and experience, and because, as we heard from Amsale, there's no bias or ethnic affiliation, and that makes it quite well placed for that. It's very well placed because of the focus on these interconnected themes that we've seen. In a sense, these interconnected themes ensure that the efforts address the root causes of conflict, because, as I said, the very themes are entry points for conflict, but also domination and so on, but they're also the entry point for restorative justice. Also, the fact that Penha prioritizes community engagement, promoting dialogue and participation in decision-making processes, is absolutely crucial for what we need right now. The commitment to gender equality, equally extremely important to carve pathways to more just and sustainable futures. And I would say, the fact that Penha has cultivated for so many years such strong relationship with various stakeholders, including the local governments, NGOs, academics, and international organization, really place it in that very important position to become a key actor on dialogue. So in a sense, the provocation is that, like, how do we rise up to this challenge now and foresee the next 35 years? And I would like therefore to open now the floor to questioning, or to bringing these to the floor, and to some Penha staff who can elaborate a little bit more. How do they see us moving forward? And I say us because we are a collective here. It's not just the organization, and we're brought here together because of our connection to Penha. Can really play a role in this and support these the peace building and moving forward through these very important thematic areas, which lead to carve a more sustainable and just future, putting traditional knowledge system at the forefront, and marginalized communities as well, the voices more strongly heard. So if I would like to open to any Penha staff member who would like perhaps to respond to some of these provocations, and then we also can open up the floor to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Rita and Mr. Morton. And I think your last questions, which will be about peace building and conflict resolution, we'll talk about it in the last session. But also just linking to the future direction of Penha, even from Professor Zeri introduction at the beginning, which shows the livestock being transported to the Middle East, is Penha is thinking about, instead of continuing on the traditional way exporting livestocks rather than processed meat and hides, which will add value to the return of cash return to the pastoralist. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who's presented, and I think Rita's just emphasized these two words, restorative justice. The book of Proverbs says, without a vision the people perish. And the vision of Penha has been a beacon of hope for these last 35 years. I'm sure it will continue to be. And it strikes me that vis-a-vis the last comment from Dr. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your first name, brother. But it's important to research and monitor what is going on, and the strength of Penha is to step back and say these are the pros and cons, rather than to try and manipulate markets in livestock, it seems to me. And one little thought which is slightly related to strategy, Zerimariam mentioned at the beginning of his presentation disappointment in the early years that a centre for excellence wasn't achieved. But he also mentioned mobile schools for the communities you're working with. And I wondered about a mobile extension approach. I mean, we use this in India, where we took a bus converted into a soil testing laboratory around great states of India. It's been used in Canada as an agricultural extension method to improve dairying. A mobile centre that could spend some time each year in each country. I wonder whether that might be a strategy you would consider.
Sorry, any other comments? I mean, maybe I could, I know, John, you didn't want us to talk about the minutiae of livestock markets, but to say a little bit about Dr. Mutal's question. I think it's great to see value being added in country to livestock products, but I think there are also dangers in underestimating the resilience of the more traditional, less formal markets in live animals. I think we've seen some of the smaller operators, particularly in Ethiopia, not only being more resilient to market shocks, but also actually contributing more to the welfare of pastoralists. The initiatives, the voluntary initiatives of some livestock marketing companies have actually been greater and more interesting than those of the licensed export abattoirs. So I think we need to look at both halves of that question on livestock marketing.
Thanks for the presentations and the feedback. I think what I want to say is one thing is we have what you call a 5-year strategy, you know. So you would be happy to know that the next strategic review is going to happen early next year, because we have to have another strategy we tend to have 5 years, not 10 years, you know. So these discussions will contribute to that. And the other thing is also, given the conflict in our region, the escalation of conflict, that's the worst about it. You know, when you plan, you have to take into account, with this conflicts, will they escalate, will they slow down? I'm very sorry, there might be more escalation, and particularly given the context in the region, you know, the Middle East and our I mean, at least for me now, in modestly thinking, number one, would Penha stick to the very original agenda it has in relation to the pastoralist communities as a marginalized group? Do we pursue that way? And I think, as you see already, you can see also we are doing other things, you know. And I think once you spread over thinly, there's also risk. This is what I would like to mention to our trustees. I think the Penha is very good at certain things, you know, and that's a niche which it had for a long time. And I don't think there's any shame about it, because the challenges are still there. But also in our strategy, maybe we can be more inclusive. What about the peasant farmers who are suffering equally? You know, that's what I think when we started Penha, the marginalization was a very clear point. Everyone was pressing these people, their land was being grabbed, etc., etc. So you have a lot of energy to be radical about it. Oh, can we change these markets, mobility and education, that sort of thing. I think now, as a regional organization, we have to be very careful, because if you spread yourself so thinly, there is a risk, Do you build on what you have? Certainly, and this kind of pastoral nomadic issues, climate change, of course, peace building. But also in the peace building area, we have done quite a lot discreetly, quietly, You go to the ministries, they happen to be your schoolmates, you have a talk with them. That kind of approach is also another approach, It doesn't have to be public, it doesn't have to be. So in a way, I think we have been good in that sense, although colleagues have been very modest about it. I think the talk and talking, face to face to those ministers, people in power, and you challenge them directly, because in our region, one of the things you don't do is you don't challenge those authorities face to face. By publishing something, you have to talk to them one to one. Otherwise you are in trouble. You get arrested next day. So I think this is a strategy was quite important. And then if you work with nomads, also sometimes they consider them as people who are terrorists. Some ministers said that to me. These people are terrorists. Can you believe that? And I had to explain to him for an hour. So please come on. What's your evidence? It can be done in that way. And I think the Horn is a bit traditional. Things are done in that way. They are not done. Although I have to acknowledge our Kenyan and Ugandan friends. You can put things on paper. And a newspaper criticize the government. In the other countries, you have to be careful. It may not be a very good strategy to go public. Microphone. Okay, sorry. That's good that you missed that bit. So, so thank you, JJ. So I mean, I'm really saying that low key, humble approach is effective. Otherwise, if we spread thinly, and we don't have resources, the money is running out for NGOs. By the way, where are we going to get? I think my colleagues were very good, positive about it. But the reality is, NGO money is drying out. What do we do? I mean, now we do this because of resources. But I'm also afraid that perhaps focusing on that mission you have from the beginning might be worthwhile revisiting, because it's your strengths. That's where your knowledge is. That's where your connections are. Even all of you who are here, have something to do with that way of life, either through studies, through sympathy. So I would guess, I mean, this is a critical time for Penha, for us to think about our strategy as an organization, never mind about the next 35 years. Even survive 5 years in our region is going to be quite a job, the way things are going. And what do we do about peace building? I mean, this is really critical. How can we manage it, What do we do? Because as you see, the region is in deep trouble now. Look at Sudan. Look at the Ethiopia-Eritrea relationship. Look at Somalia. Look at the foreign powers we are involving in our region. What do we do, And many of these powers are uninvited. They're coming to us. We're not going to them, So what do we do? This is, for me, it's a nightmare. Because I think it's just during the liberation wars in the 70s and the 80s, we were optimistic about the better Horn. It's going to be great. We're going to cross borders. We got even the Penha logos. You see it. We didn't have any colonial borders in it. The idea is this is a region we share so much heritage, economy, livelihood, history. So that kind of dream now is probably, you even have to revisit a lot of my Horn friends. What's your business here? Where are the different countries? I said, this is a vision, a vision, long-term vision about the region, And nomads don't recognize borders, for goodness sake, So in a way, we have to think about what we do as an organization. Sorry, Matal, I'm getting a bit carried away, but I think we shouldn't lose the focus we have. I think we have a niche. A niche is important, A particular niche where we are good at. Should we sustain that? What do you think? You tell us if you think expanding Penha and the way you saw it today is a good idea, or if you think that perhaps you guys, you could slow down and, focus on certain things. This is really, I would like to be honest and give us your views on that, your impressions. Thank you.
Any responses to these questions raised by Zara Mariam?
My name's Rosalind Reed, and I work in business. Business startups here, and I'm looking to develop more business startup programs in Africa and the Caribbean, particularly amongst the young. So I think two things that I wanted to ask, maybe a reflection. that for Penha, how are you going to, you've got 35 years of expertise, knowledge and experience. How can you use that or leverage that to share amongst other nations around the world, particularly maybe regions like South America, with all the knowledge and understanding that you've gained? And that could be a money generation activity that's going to help you to support you long term. And what's your legacy? How are you bringing young people to carry on the work that you've done so far?
Consolidation is a very important phase of strategic planning. So it is important to recognise your heritage and not lose it by charging off in too many directions. It's tempting when an organisation gets to 35 to do that, but I don't get the sense that you are doing that. I think the developments that we've heard on the video have been very constructive ones, but consolidation's a very important word. And entrepreneurship, which is what our sister here is just talking about. And entrepreneurship is, I'm very encouraged actually to meet some of the younger people in this very room who are associated with Penha. So I think you are looking to the future, and may you continue to do so. Thank you.
We know that Penha and the pastoralists are specialists in resilience. And if we look at our region now with conflict, because I'm interested in refugee and migration studies, we have a lot of refugees that are losing the resilience in that respect because they come from cities and other places. And is there a way that Penha can lead in teaching as specialists or involving in adapting the resilience that has been learned from pastoralists to the refugee in that area?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Champion, photo aid and various bits and bobs. I've travelled and seen and documented some of the amazing work and met the fantastic women and all the projects that you're engaged in sort of firsthand, kind of coming at it from a completely left field kind of independent sort of view, and it's phenomenal. And I've been following, and obviously I know Zeri, and Zeri keeps collaring me and giving me updates, and this has been amazing. I mean, honestly, phenomenal stories here. I was just, because my head's media, that's what I do. But I was just thinking, I don't know, because of all that's going on with like climate change and, obviously the peace and the resilience and everything that you've been talking about, it seems to me like there's stories that you could share with the media in some way. And obviously, I don't know if you have a PR company, but if you can maybe team up with somebody to do PR, I think that would generate cash for you. So this is kind of like practical kind of thing I'm saying, I suppose, more than anything. But I think you have so much value to give, and it just might be something to just put into the business mix when you're looking for the next 5 years, particularly now when we're trying to accelerate communication of climate mitigation. So that's kind
of. Thank you very much, Vanessa, and I hope the Penha crew will take notice of that. I think it's a very useful recommendation. Okay, well I'll say make a few more points. Vanessa mentioned climate change. It featured in the presentation, but maybe not as a big headline. And obviously people in this room are very concerned about conflict, but we have to be very concerned about climate change as well. The projections for the lowland Horn of Africa are for a drier climate, for increased drought, increased unpredictability of rainfall. The projections for the highland part of East Africa are actually for a wetter climate, but also a more unpredictable rainfall. A different apportionment of rainfall across the year, differences in the rainy seasons, and increased likelihood of floods which is going to impact on lowlands and pastoral communities. And in addition, we have further threats that we're only beginning to think about. In 2016, Cyclone Sagar was, I believe, the first tropical storm ever to make landfall in the Horn of Africa. It caused fatalities in both Somalia and Ethiopia. The general projections seem to be for increased cyclone activity in the Indian Ocean, and the northern Indian Ocean in particular. So that's yet another thing to add into the mix. It's in terms of climate change where we're dealing not only with the known unknowns around rainfall projections, but unknown unknowns like increased tropical storms. So I think that this is a very important area of uncertainty we have to think about. There have been lots of questions which we're not attempting to answer. I'm maybe going to leave two more here with you. The first is on how Penha influences policy. I mean, we've seen these very impressive publications. When I say glossy, I'm in no way meaning that in a pejorative way. I think it's important that these are well produced and attractive, but I think we all need to think about exactly how that knowledge that's embodied in those publications gets into policy and into public discussion. It's not just by waving things at ministers or policymakers. There are whole gamut, broad spectrum of ways in which you can influence policy, and I think it's be worth thinking more about that. And the second, which really goes on from that, is how Penha positions itself vis-a-vis governments. I think Zere has hinted at some governments being more amenable to progressive policies and public voices than others. But Penha obviously wants to work with governments. The Dryland Restoration Programme document, a policy document that was shown, is a good example of working with government agencies. But how does Penha think of itself vis-a-vis government, as an advocate or as an honest broker or as a more engaged partner doing some of the work actually with government? I think these are important questions which I think should be reflected upon. But really, having made those 3 points, I would just like again to congratulate the teams on the ground in Penha. I think when Rita asked, how will Penha survive, this was not sort of how will Penha survive. This was, how will Penha survive? Because I think it will. I think as long as there is a need for it, and that looks like being indefinite, that we can continue working as Penha, as friends of Penha, to help pastoralists in the Horn to sustainable and dignified livelihoods.